Psalm 55, and we'll begin in verse 20 and 21. Psalms 55 has a lot to say about the Antichrist and his relationship to Israel. Psalm 55, verse 20 and 21. It says, verse 20, He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. That's the Antichrist. Now, I'm going to cover a subject that I mentioned, but didn't give you a lot of supporting information for the last time, because it's a big subject. And it's one of those you don't have to believe. This is my opinion. And I'll give you enough Bible that I think backs it up to prove it. This will be my reasons for saying Judas Iscariot is the Antichrist. Here's my reasoning. The occasion is given in the verses we read, and that refers directly to a covenant. He comes in at a peaceful time. He comes in peaceful. The Antichrist does. He doesn't come in by war. The reference is to the Antichrist breaking his 7-year covenant. He will make a covenant with Israel. Now, here's something to get. I don't know how much of the notes we'll use because this is all just out of my brain. So, what he does when he comes in is he makes a covenant with Israel. Look at Daniel chapter 9, and I'm going to give you somebody else's opinion. Daniel 9. Daniel 9, verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Okay, so it does not say he'll make a covenant. It says he'll confirm a covenant. However, with the Bible, what you have to do is you've got to get all of the information on a given subject before you have all the information on it. So if I say he confirms a covenant with 1 week, if there's no other verses on it, then it simply means someone else has made the covenant and he's just confirming it. Okay? And that's what has been done. I know somebody who says the covenant he's confirming is the covenant God made with Israel to give them land. And he's confirming that covenant. However, there's more to it than that. Chapter 11, verse 23. Go down to 24. He shall enter peaceably, even unto the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Yea, he shall forecast his devices against the strong holds even for a time. No, that's not the verse I wanted. Verse 23. I thought something was missing. Verse 23. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully. For he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. Okay, so it is an actual 7-year covenant that's being signed right there, a league. He's going to sit at a table with many and sign a league. So it's not something that he's confirming from God. It's something he's making among nations. So that's the covenant that's being confirmed, not God's covenant. He doesn't care anything about that. Look at verse 21, Daniel 11:21. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and attain the kingdom by flatteries. just like we saw in Psalms 55, or where were we? Psalms 55, yeah. He's going to come in by flattery. He's going to talk smooth. His words are going to be like oil and silk, and he's going to make them all think that he's the answer to all their problems. Now, it says he's coming in peacefully. That doesn't mean he's coming in during a time of peace, because you don't need an answer if there's already a time of peace. What's to be gained by that? No, the tribulation is not a time of peace. The first 3.5 years is not a time of peace. The first 3.5 years is God's wrath, just like the last 3.5 years. It just keeps increasing the farther they go. But the first 3.5 years are not something you want to enjoy. So the reason it works for him is he comes in, unlike these other nations who, to the victor go the spoil. That's the way it's supposed to be done, and it will be done again. These other nations trying to conquer and, set up rule by their own power. He's going to come in and say, hey, look, let's come to the table and all agree on something. That's the peaceful part. Peaceful part is not the environment, is not God sitting there waiting for the last 3.5 years to begin. Now, the peaceful part only has to do with how he obtains the rulership. Okay, so having that information, that Psalms 55 is a correlation to Daniel chapter 9 and 11, and it has to do with the Antichrist. We'll see some things with that in mind. You'll see the sorrow of Israel, Jacob's time of trouble. You'll see all of that played out in that psalm. So go to Psalms 55, verse 11 to 14. Psalm 55, verse 11 to 14. There's a double application here, or triple or quadruple. It says, the wickedness in the midst thereof, deceit and guile depart not from her streets. For it was not an enemy that reproached me, then I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. Then what would I have then I would have hid myself from him. I cannot read. Verse 13. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide, a man mine acquainted. We took sweet counsel together and walked unto the house of God in company. Okay, so who is that? Well, if it's talking about David, it could be any number of people. It could be Absalom, his son. It could be several people in David's life who turned against him. However, there is a tone here that's telling you there's something prophetic going on. Okay? So if we read into it what we've seen from Daniel, then he's talking about something happening in the tribulation, and it's Israel as the one offended, and Judas Iscariot, the offender. These verses describe the treachery of Judah toward Christ, and that was one take, but also they announce how Judas Iscariot, when he's reincarnated as the Antichrist, will betray and desert Israel. Okay, so if Israel is speaking, saying, I've been betrayed by my friend, they will be. They'll be at a peace conference, and they'll be signing an agreement with the Antichrist, thinking he's going to be okay. And what's he going to do? He's going to betray them, just like Judas did to Jesus Christ. The relationship of the Antichrist to Israel will be the same as that of Christ and Judas at Christ's betrayal. He'll pose as the friend of the Jews, but later he'll turn his true colors out. You'll see who he is. The last 3.5 years, there will be no doubt. In the tribulation period, the nation of Israel will taste the bitterness of betrayal, just as they became the betrayer of Christ when he walked the earth. The tables will turn, and they will get what they've given. But it'll be 4 sheep for a sheep. The nation of Israel is going to be in bad shape. He says, my familiar friend. We have the first mention a hint of who this familiar friend is here. It would probably be Judas Iscariot reincarnated. In Isaiah 28, verse 18. Isaiah 28, 18. Isaiah 28, 18. We're going to read this verse and then think about it. He says, "And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it." Okay? So, who makes a covenant with death and hell? Nobody knowingly. But that's what Israel is going to do. These are names of the Antichrist, death and hell. He continues on to tell you that it is tribulation. He says, when the overflowing scourge shall pass through, we know what that is. There's going to be a flood in the tribulation, overflowing. And there's going to be a scourge. 2/3 of Israel is going to be destroyed. Yeah, that's a scourge. Then ye shall be trodden down, as in Armageddon, horses riding over them. The covenant referred to is the 7-year contract that he makes. That's mentioned in Daniel 9:27. But here the one with whom the covenant is made is called death and hell. This is a title of the Antichrist, and it's an anti-title of Christ. Because what is Christ? The resurrection and the life. So what would he call the devil? Death and hell. Just the opposite. In Revelation chapter 6, Revelation chapter 6, you'll find, just let your eye run down that chapter and you'll see what it's about. There's a fourfold picture of the Antichrist. And there's 4 for a reason. We know what 4 is. 4 is earth. How many Gospels are there? 4. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So, the Antichrist comes in with his 4-fold message for the earth. Just like Jesus had a 4-fold gospel for the earth when he was here. He's seen as the rider on different colored horses in this chapter, which is 4 stages of his coming to power, or his career. The last of them in chapter 6, verse 8. Says, "And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him." There's the death and hell. Okay, somebody makes a contract with death and hell. We understand that. Now, hell's a place which receives the souls of the dead. We understand that. The fact that his name is here applied to the Antichrist shows that he has come from hell. That's where he's from. Matthew chapter 12. Verse 41 to 43. The Antichrist will be an unclean spirit.
What was that?
That's Matthew 12, verse 41 to 43. Now, he does some strange things in this passage. He talks about people rising from the dead and speaking. Now, we brush through that as though it's just pictorial language. However, there's a point to it, and we'll get there. Matthew 12:41. "The men of Nineveh shall rise in judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonas. And behold, a greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south shall rise up in the judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it. For she came from the uttermost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, a greater than Solomon is here." Now, all of a sudden, it's almost like he changed subject on us. Verse 43. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. What in the world? Do you see how abrupt that is? But he's talking about something. The history of this unclean spirit is divided into 3 stages. First, the unclean spirit dwelt in a man. See that in our verse? Verse 43. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man. So he was in the man. The second is, having gone out of the man, he walks through dry places, seeking rest, and he finds none. This is his present condition. The Antichrist's present condition is he's not on the earth. He's seeking something and not finding it. Third, he says, I'll return to my house. This unclean spirit, then, who's already been here, as in Judas Iscariot, will come back to his house because he hasn't found what he's been looking for. Okay, I've given you a lot of things without a whole lot of support for it, and I'll begin to give that to you. John 17, verse 12. John 17, verse 12. Notice the wording here is going to show us clearly that Judas Iscariot will be reincarnated. John 17, verse 12. This is Jesus. While I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that thou gavest me I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scriptures might be fulfilled. Okay, so the son of perdition is the Antichrist. And he's talking here of Judas Iscariot. So Judas Iscariot in the Bible, let's find out who he is. Who is he? He was a man, of course, but he's more than just a man. In John 6, verse 70. John 6, verse 70. He says, have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? Okay, so there's something more to Judas Iscariot than just what the other 11 were. Judas then was the devil incarnate, just as the Lord Jesus Christ, God standing there, was God incarnate. John 17:12 talked about the son of perdition. That's how he's phrased. In John 13:26, John 13, verse 26. John 13:26, which is 13 plus 13 and 13. So we got 3 13s. This is bad news. Jesus answered, he it is to whom I shall give sop. That is, who's going to be the betrayer. Sop. You see the word? S-O-P, son of perdition. When I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, second time, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Verse 27. After the sop, third time, Satan entered into him. Then said Jesus unto him, that thou doest, do quickly. Verse 30. Then having received the fourth time sop, went immediately out, and it was night. Remember what we saw in Revelation 6? The devil shows up on 4 horses. Okay? 4 times sop shows up connected with Judas Iscariot. The son of perdition is connected with the Antichrist, and only the Antichrist. Look at, where did we stop? Okay, look at 1929. John 19:29. I'm going to show you something else. John 19:29. This is, of course, Jesus on the cross. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar and put it upon, what's that word? Hyssop. Do you see sop in there? What do you see before if we take the word sop out of that word, what do you see? Hiss. Hyssop. Hiss. Like the sound a snake makes. The great red dragon, the serpent, and sop. And put it to his mouth. Just a coincidence, but all these coincidences are going to add up real quick. 2 Thessalonians 2. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3. Second Thessalonians 2:3. He says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first. And that man of sin," that man of sin? He's talking about one specific individual. That man of sin be revealed. Who is it? The son of perdition. Sop. That's who the Antichrist is going to be. Now, we're here, so I'm going to run a quick rabbit trail just to clear up this chapter. Verse 1. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him. Okay, so Paul's saying for the church age believer, what you need to keep in mind is our gathering is going to be to Jesus Christ, not the Antichrist. Somebody else is going to have to worry about that, not a believer in the church age. Then he says, that you be not soon shaken in mind or troubled, neither by spirit nor by word nor by letter as from us, that day, the day of Christ is at hand. Okay, so he's saying, don't get all scared, because our gathering together is to Jesus Christ, not the Antichrist. Then he's going to go on and tell them about the Antichrist. I'm going to show you a mistake that people make, not in the Bible. Verse 6. Now go to verse 8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth. You've probably heard this, that the Antichrist will be revealed before the church leaves. That's baloney. The church is not going to see the Antichrist. His time is not for us. We have nothing in common. Let's look at it. Verse 6. And now you know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. Talking about the Antichrist. There's something holding back the Antichrist from being revealed. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth, that is, prevents, will let until he be taken out of the way. Okay, the person preventing the Antichrist from coming in is none other than the Holy Spirit, the body of Christ. And until we're taken out of the way, the man of sin cannot be revealed. But once we're gone, he will be revealed. Let's read on. Verse 8. Verse 7. The mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let. Okay, the person that's preventing him from being revealed is going to keep doing it until, that's an important word, until he be taken out of the way. Why is he going to be taken out of the way? Verse 2, our gathering together unto Christ. Then we'll be taken out of the way. So, verse 8, then shall that wicked be revealed. Okay, so after we're gone, he'll be revealed, and not until. You'll hear that thing from time to time, people saying that the Antichrist, they say that the gospel has to be preached in every nation. It's the gospel of the kingdom, and it has nothing to do with the rapture. It has to do with the second advent. Okay, back to our lesson. Let no man deceive you. That man of sin will be revealed. The son of perdition is what he's called, the son of perdition. There are only two places in the Bible where his name occurs. The fact that Judas was termed by Christ as not a son of perdition, but the son of perdition is very noteworthy because he's identifying someone specific. He's not a son, he's the son of perdition. And then there we saw the wicked one is the son of perdition. So they're two, one and the same. Revelation 11, verse 7. Revelation 11, verse 7. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, about Israel, and shall overcome them and kill them. Okay, so this beast comes out of where? The bottomless pit. Now, is that hell? Well, the simple way to know is hell is spelled H-E-double-L. The bottomless pit is spelled with a lot more letters. They're not the same. The bottomless pit, God has no problem saying hell when it's hell. The bottomless pit is something different. Okay? Here, the Antichrist is coming from the bottomless pit. So what is the bottomless pit? Good question. Glad you asked. Revelation 20. Do what?
I was going to say, he went to his place, Judas' place, you know.
Revelation 20, verse 1 to 3. Revelation 21 to 3. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a season. So there's a bottomless pit there. And somebody can be sealed in as a prison, as a house to keep them under house arrest. Luke chapter 8, verse 31. Luke 8:31. Toby, look up Jonah and find him going down the depths were over him. Luke 8:31. And they besought him that he would not command them to... This is the demons that are coming out of the maniac of Gadara. And they besought him that he would not command them to go out into the deep. Okay, the deep is something that is not water as we know it. Because you know where they go? They go into the sea. Well, the sea was not water. I mean, the sea is water, but it's not the deep. So that's not the same thing they're talking about. So the deep could have something to do with this pit, bottomless pit. The question is, did you find that one for me? Where's that?
It's
Jonah?
Jonah 2.
Jonah 2, what?
Chapter 2. It depends on how far out. Do you want just the specific
Uh-huh.
verse about that? The waters compassed me about. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains.
Yeah.
The earth with their bars.
What verse is that?
That's verse 6.
Jonah 2:6. Jonah 2:6. I went down to the bottom of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought up my life from corruption. Look at Psalms 9, verse 15. He says here, the heathen have sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. So there's something about this pit, and bottomless pit, and deep, and all goes together. So that's some facts to put on the table, and then in a minute we're going to start adding all those things together, but right now we're going to separate them. Yeah, it's going to be deep. The question naturally is going to arise, how did he get there? This Antichrist that's in the bottomless pit. Now, we saw that after the tribulation, he's going to be bound and an angel's going to come down and put him there. But how did he get there to begin with? Because he comes up out of that thing. Well, how did he get put in there to begin with? Acts chapter 1, verse 25. This is talking about after Christ's resurrection and ascension back to heaven. The disciples and apostles all get together, and they're going to try to find a replacement for Judas Iscariot. And they're talking about what happened to him. Acts 1:25. It says that he may take part of this ministry and apostleship, from which Judas by transgression fell, that he might go to his own place. So Judas went, he didn't die and go to hell. He went to his own place. Why? Because his job ain't done yet. He'll be back. Of no one else in the Bible is it said that at death he went to his own place. This is the only one. You find them gathered to their fathers, gathered to their people, but not go to their own place. He's unique. The beast ascends out of the bottomless pit. He's going to eventually be put back in the pit. So there's something special about that location. Revelation 17, verse 8. Revelation 17:8. The beast that thou sawest, now it's going to sound like I'm doing double, triple talk. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Okay, so he told you three things about him. He was, he ain't, he will be. Okay, so here's what we have. Judas Iscariot one time was. Right now he ain't, but he is. But he's not. But he'll be back. This verse is generally accepted to mean the Roman Empire. That's how it's usually explained. The Roman Empire was a great world dominating force. right now it's not. Yes, it is, but they claim right now it's not. But then it'll come back as a dominating force. Okay, maybe, I don't know. In Revelation 17, verse 8, he says, behold, the beast that was, this is at the very end. Behold, the beast that was and is not, yet is. Okay. So there's something special about this that's not, I would say it does not apply to the Roman Empire. Because we're talking about something that was not. What does that mean? It means was not on the earth. One time it was on the earth. Then there's a time it was not on the earth. And there will be a time it will be back on the earth. The earth is the understood noun that's not spelled out. Let's see. Genesis 5, verse 24. Genesis 5, verse 24. Sometimes you read along and you see some things that look like I don't understand what that's saying. And that's good. So ask your Bible. Tell me what that means. Then start looking at the words that are in it and start looking for those words in the Bible. And he'll explain it to you. Genesis 5:24. Now, you see what we just did? We were in the book of Revelation. But to get the answer to what was said in Revelation, we go to Genesis. Now, had we been paying attention when we read through the book of Genesis, we would have known what he meant in Revelation. Let's read it. Genesis 5:24. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Does that mean he ceased to exist? No, he went right with God. It says he was not, meaning he was not on the earth. So in Revelation, when he says this beast was and is not and will be back again, okay, he's talking about a physical location on the earth. He was not physically on this earth. He went to his place. But soon he'll be back on the earth. That's the understood thing. At the time that John the Apostle is writing this, obviously, Judas Iscariot was not. He had already hung himself. So physically, that matches exactly what he's saying. He's not on this earth, but he will be back. He had just walked and eaten and spent 3.5 years with him, so he knew him well. He was, and he could vouch for it. One day he was here. I knew him well, but now he's not here. But I've been up to the mountain and seen what happens on the other side, and he'll be back. Revelation 19. Revelation 19, verse 20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. The lake of fire is the final destination. That's the final solution. Hitler got it wrong. It was a gas chamber. It's just not the one that he created. There's going to be the lake of fire. God calls it the second death. He says death and hell are cast into the lake of fire. Now, you notice in this passage, somebody's going to be cast into the lake of fire. This will be the last that we hear of them. They're done. When you go to the lake of fire, there's no returning. The Antichrist will be cast into the pit. Satan, the Antichrist at the end of the tribulation, let me say this right, there's a lot of pieces in play here. The Antichrist at the beginning of the tribulation comes up out of the pit. At the end of the tribulation, we just read it, he's cast into the lake of fire, not hell, not the pit, because he's done. That's over with. However, Satan is something different. Satan is not cast into the lake of fire at the end of the tribulation. Let's find him. Revelation 20, verse 1. Revelation 20, verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand. Wait a minute. We just saw the Antichrist go to the lake of fire, the false prophet. How come Satan isn't going with them? He's not joining his buddies with them. He's going somewhere different. He's not made his final trip yet. Verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. He's going to be bound up. Verse 3. And cast him into the bottomless pit, that he should deceive the nations no more until, or till, there's a time stamp on it, the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a season. So his mission ain't over yet. See, what happened was he made a 5-fold statement to God that he was going to be greater than he. And God didn't like that. Don't make him mad. So God says, I tell you what, just to show you you're not as big and tough as you think you are, I'm going to publicly beat you to a pulp in front of the world 5 times. The tribulation is the end of number 4. But the tribulation isn't his final. That's just public beatdown number 4. So God says after the tribulation, I'm going to lock you back up in your room. Time out. For 1,000 years. Then I'm going to let you out, and we're going to do it all over again. Gog and Magog. That'll be at the end of the millennium. Revelation 20, verse 10. Revelation 20, verse 10. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire. Okay, at the end of the millennium, he's gone. The devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. We saw them earlier. Remember, they got cast into the lake of fire when he got put into the bottomless pit. Well, at the end of the millennium, they're going to all be together again, but not together. Where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And they lived happily ever after. Not happily, though. Unhappily. All right, that's Judas Iscariot as the Antichrist. I hate to make mention of something and not give you the verses for it. So that's all the verses on it, and that'll do it for tonight. Any questions? That's a lot of information.